Joining me right now is Georgia Congressman, Judiciary Committee Ranking Member Doug Collins. Congressman, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria.
Yeah, I watched you the other day in the gallery for the impeachment vote, and you made a lot of important points, one of which was they rushed this impeachment through. You were rushing, getting to the vote before everybody left for Christmas, and now she doesn't want to move on it. She's not sending it over to the Senate. What do you know about this?
Well, look, the Speaker never ceases to amaze. She makes points. She tries to gain leverage on things she doesn't have leverage on. And now what's really interesting is that by holding this, she's made it a purely political exercise. Now, think about what I'm saying here. Most of us believe this is purely political anyway. But by holding this out, remember, her great statement was this is going to be a conscience vote. Vote your conscience. We're doing this for the morals of our country and for the clear and present danger that this president creates. And now she's holding the documents. If I was one of those 31 Democrats in Trump districts, I'd be sitting there saying, hold on a second. We did what we thought was right, and now you're making a political mockery of this. Madam Speaker, send the impeachment articles over so this president can get a fair trial. And that's just not what's happening right here. But this is typical Speaker Pelosi. This is typical from what she's done from day one. She has no rudder except one thing: get this president defeated.
How much is it that she wants to keep President Trump on his toes? She just wants to keep him guessing in terms of her next move into 2020. And what is that doing for all the 2020 candidates? I'll tell you, last night, the debate, some people I know didn't even know that there was a debate on, because there's so much conversation about impeachment. It's taking all the oxygen out of the room. She's actually hurting her own party and the candidates, isn't she? They can't get their messages out.
Well, look, as a very staunch Republican in support of the president, I'm not really concerned if the Democrats continue their vague journey into ambiguity out there where nobody knows what they're talking about, which if you actually watch the debates, it's even worse. So I think at this point in time, she is so centered on her attention and her spotlight and what she does as Speaker that really she's not concerned about the candidates at this point. Now, she'll turn her attention to that later because she's desperately wanting a Democrat to beat President Trump next year. That's why we've been manipulating this process all along. There's been especially this fall, when you take Adam Schiff, you move it in, to closed doors, you leak out what you want to leak out. Then when it came out into the open, people were saying, wait, this is not matching up with what we were hearing coming out of closed doors. And then when it came to the rubber stamp of the Judiciary Committee, and then what we saw on the floor, I thought it was really interesting, though. Adam Schiff actually emerged from his hole and came out to the floor of the House to actually help manage part of those articles the other day. And every time he wanted to say something, I would pop back with the truth. And finally, he just sort of sat back down and got to where he wasn't even trying to answer anymore. He knows that what they put out is a bad product. He knows that what they put out is simply a political document. And this is why they just sit back and right now are saying to the American people, just trust us. But the American people see through it. Just like you were talking about with the economy, the American people are looking around saying her rhetoric and reality don't match.
Yeah, the other thing is, though, it's so shameful, Congressman, that the Democrats are unwilling to admit that there were serious wrongdoing done in 2016 and the election to try to frame Donald Trump and to try to really put a coup in place to take him down when he was candidate and then even after he was president. I'm grateful that I have been able to work with you and Devin Nunes and John Ratcliffe over these 3 years to really understand what took place and tell our viewers about it over the last 3 years. And we talked a lot about who the mastermind of all of this could be, among the masterminds, and it always went back to the CIA. Our audience knows that. U.S. Attorney John Durham is now investigating former CIA Director John Brennan. The prosecutor tasked with investigating the origins of the Russia probe reportedly is requesting Brennan's emails, his call logs, and other CIA documents to see what Brennan told colleagues about the infamous Steele dossier. And this is the New York Times reporting this. Of course, we knew this, that Brennan was going to get fingered. What do you make of this?
Well, I see it already, the New York Times spinning this to try and soften what may be the ultimate blow here. Look, there's a reason Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats are screaming impeachment so loud right now, because this is the holiday season, the Christmas season. It's the time of redemption. And what we're finding right now is all those folks who made fun of us for talking about a corrupt cabal of Strzok, McCabe, Comey, Page, all of those folks, Brennan, Clapper, they were saying, oh, you're wrong, you're wrong. Schiff wrote a document that became, purely fiction, which is not uncommon for Adam Schiff. That may be his next career, writing fiction books, because he's done such a good job of it over the last couple of years. But Devin Nunes was right. We've been talking about this for a long time. And what's happening now, when we had the IG report come out, we had Mr. Comey last week on the Sunday shows absolutely make just a mockery of himself when he acted like he didn't know what was wrong, or that anything was wrong in the FBI on these investigations, when he was signing off on these FISA requests. When you had the FISA court come out and say, you better get this stuff right because we're not going to tolerate this kind of stuff anymore. When you start seeing that, I made a comment to some folks down here this morning, the story of next year will be the Durham investigations. The story of next year, I believe, is going to be a redemption to where the American people can now again, under Bill Barr and this leadership, trust the Department of Justice to not be arbitrary in their enforcement of the law, but call the law and call the balls and strikes just as they should. That's going to be the good story coming out of the first of the year.
I agree with you, especially as he looks at what took place before July of 16, because the FBI keeps lying and saying, yeah, the counter investigation into Trump began in July of 16. We know that's not true. We know that there were informants running into campaign people as early as March of 16. And when you look at General Flynn, you could actually go back to end of 15.
Well, they were desperate. I mean, when they started seeing then candidate Trump begin to make inroads into the political process, people actually resonating to his message, and then as it continued on, when he actually became the nominee, and then into the becoming the president-elect and then the president, you just see it ramping up. And I think it's really amazing to me how the stories are trying to be spun now. That's not what we really did. This was all a perfect investigation kind of thing. And it's just all turning out to be wrong. Comey cannot go on TV without basically looking like the incompetent leader that he is. He's not Captain America. He's Captain I leak and Captain lie, because that's what he did for the time when he was trying to obfuscate what he was doing as the FBI director. They just didn't like him. It reminds me so much of the majority. I told you just the other day, the Democratic majority have been trying to do this since November 2016, talking about impeachment, and they had the mean, the motive, and the opportunity. The opportunity for them to do this started last November when they gained the majority. They've already had the others laid in place because they wanted to get rid of him. Yeah. I'm looking forward to this Christmas season, this break, when we look forward to an impeachment in which we'll see the president acquitted, when we see the ending of this impeachment sham, and then we move forward into the new year when we start shedding light on what actually happened and making sure the Department of Justice is working for the American people, not for the corrupt cabal that was there under the Obama administration.
Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary, and I want to know how far up the ladder it goes. I mean, obviously Brennan seems to have been among the masterminds of this plan to insert Donald Trump's name in Russia meddling from the get-go, but who else is involved? Did it go all the way up to Loretta Lynch and President Obama?
Well, that's going to be the thing that we're continuing to look at. I'm glad Durham is taking his time. He's methodically looking at this. Unlike the rush and sham job we saw in the House of Representatives for the last 3 months, Mr. Durham's not going to be pressured by anyone. He's going to do his job. He's going to come out with what he needs to come out with, both good or bad. Let the chips fall where they may. But again, what we're seeing here, go back to Ms. Lynch, the Attorney General Lynch, in the Clinton email investigations. We already had seen the problems that were developing there, saying that we're changing how we actually talked about it. Yeah. These are the kind of things that, again, people want to say you're just wanting to go back in the past. But to understand this impeachment, to understand why we're at it, you've got to understand the past. In our country, we're too committed to 30-second sound bites and 3-minute music videos that our attention span is so short. We've got to remind people the reason you have impeachment now is because of what the corrupt cabal started even before this president was the nominee of the Republican Party. And we've got to make sure that when you look at that and you start targeting American citizens in a secret court, that should scare everyone. And then when you have Adam Schiff, it just translates into the impeachment. When Adam Schiff took a political potshot, hack job, that's all that was, to name Devin and Nunes and other reporters as having call records associated with other individuals, that was nothing but wrong. It's just a dishonesty that should never be tolerated in the halls of Congress, and we saw it there simply for political retribution. Adam Schiff should be ashamed. The Democratic Party should be ashamed, because this is all the impeachment articles actually showed at the end, was this was nothing but a political hack job.
Right, but the thing is they seem to be very strategic in terms of changing the narrative on you guys, the Republicans. I mean, really, we know that Jim Comey and Brennan and Clapper and Andrew McCabe were intimately involved in all these decision making, and yet they come up with the impeachment and they sort of take the oxygen out of the room and muddy up the story. And here we are, waiting for any accountability on this. It's really shameful that you haven't seen the Democrats focus on what went wrong. Anybody on both sides of the aisle should be outraged by what took place in 16, and even the media will not admit it. It's actually quite extraordinary. You do think then that we're going to see accountability?
I do. And I think, look, remember, Bill Barr just came in earlier this year. We see this investigation taking place. We see him taking bold steps to restore the dignity of the Department of Justice. We see this moving forward. Again, remember, I'm going to flip your narrative a little bit. Let's make sure that the American people understand they're shifting the narrative because they don't want to talk about the truth. And when they get to the issues of hand, especially with what they came up with impeachment, we kept beating it back so many times on their story. Remember how they started with extortion, bribery, pressure, all these things. We beat that back to where when they actually came out with the articles, they had a vague abuse of power and an obstruction of Congress.
Right.
Really? That's what you're going to take out? Yeah. So we're winning this battle when we tell the truth, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
And the other thing is all of the policies are really working. You had USMCA now pass the House. That's going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs and an economy that shows unemployment at a 50-year low. So they don't want to talk about that either, by the way, Congressman. Look, it's good to see you this morning. Of course, we're going to continue following it, and I hope you'll come back soon. Thank you so much.
I'll definitely do that. Y'all take care. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Congressman Doug Collins joining us.